Welcome to our deep dive. We'll be talking about intimacy after sexual trauma, and we've got some really good sources for you today. We've got stories from survivors. We've got therapists giving advice, research on the healing process. I mean, it's pretty incredible, actually. And, this is a sensitive subject, so just remember you come first, right? Like if anything starts to feel overwhelming, just, step away and come back when you're ready.
It's so true. It's, we want to make sure we approach this topic with a lot of respect for everybody's individual journey. And our aim today is just to give you some good information and hopefully some aha moments, maybe some tools you can start using today.
Yeah. And one thing that really hit me right away was how much this idea that trauma can impact someone's entire life, is not just about the event itself, but it's like the lasting effects on mental health, relationships, even how someone sees themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Sexual trauma can really just shatter a person's sense of safety and trust, which are kind of the fundamentals for so many parts of life. And it's not always, the stranger in a dark alley. One study even showed that about half of women who experience sexual assault are actually assaulted by someone they know, like a partner or an acquaintance.
Oh, wow. That's kind of disturbing, right? It really challenges the idea that we're only vulnerable in certain situations. And it makes me think about the way survivors cope with that. I know in the Mended Light video, they talked about how some people might become overly sexual as a way to try and regain control.
It's so complex, right? Because these types of coping mechanisms, while they're understandable, can lead to more judgment. People might misunderstand, and worse, they might blame the survivor for their behavior. So it really shows how important it is to have honest conversations about these experiences.
For sure. And speaking of needing more understanding, something that stood out to me was this whole idea of the freeze response. The Therapy in a Nutshell video talked about it being like this ancient survival mechanism that can be even more powerful than fight or flight.
It is, and what's fascinating is it's not just humans. They show this example in the video with a duck, like a duck freezes when a dog approaches. It's like primal and, hardwired into so many different species. And during a traumatic experience like assault, that freeze response can actually make it physically impossible to fight back or even say no.
So it's not even a choice. It's like a physiological response, right? Like the body just slams on the emergency brake.
Sure.
But I feel like because it's not very widely understood, survivors can end up feeling ashamed or blaming themselves for freezing.
Right, and it's so important to understand that the freeze response is not consent, and it's not a sign of weakness either. It's just a biological reaction to extreme threat. In fact, something like 70% of sexual assault victims report experiencing significant tonic immobility during the assault.
Wow, 70%. But then only a tiny fraction, like 5% or something, ever report it to the police.
Yeah.
It's tragic how these misconceptions and societal pressures can silence survivors.
Absolutely, and that makes it even more important for us to educate ourselves and others about the freeze response. Debunking these myths is really a key step in creating a more supportive environment for survivors.
Okay, so we're starting to see how deeply this trauma can affect someone. But what about healing? Is it possible to rebuild a positive relationship with intimacy after going through something like this?
Absolutely. Healing is possible, and a fulfilling and enjoyable sex life is within reach, even after experiencing something so devastating. But, and this is so crucial, safety and control have to be the foundation of that healing process.
Yeah, and I saw that emphasized a lot in the sources we looked at. Like, for example, in the Dissociated video, they talk about using safe words. I know that's common in BDSM, but I hadn't really thought about it for other situations.
And what's powerful about safe words is that they give them a way to communicate their needs and boundaries clearly and directly. And it gives them back that sense of control. So it's almost like you can think of it as a traffic light system. Red means stop, yellow means slow down, green means go.
I like that. Yeah, it's clear, easy to remember, and you can use it in so many different situations. It's like you have a tool right there in your pocket to regain control.
Exactly. And it's not just about avoiding triggers. It's about being able to actually actively participate and say yes to things that feel good. Because healing isn't linear. There will be ups and downs. But with the right tools and the right support, rebuilding that sense of safety and control is absolutely possible.
It's really amazing to me how much of this just comes down to giving people the information and the tools they need to advocate for themselves. But it's also about reclaiming pleasure.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. Healing isn't just about avoiding pain. It's also about rediscovering joy and finding ways to experience intimacy that feels good and safe. And the Rewire Newsgroup video had this concept of pleasurable presence, which I found really interesting.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that. What is that?
Well, think about it this way. What are some things you enjoy outside of sex? What activities bring you joy and peace? Maybe it's gardening, listening to music, taking a bath, whatever makes you feel good.
Okay, yeah.
So the idea behind pleasurable presence is to see if you can bring some of those elements into your intimate experiences. So maybe incorporating certain scents, textures, or even just the feeling of sunlight on your skin. It's about rebuilding those positive associations and finding ways to make intimacy feel comforting and pleasurable again.
I love that. It's such a simple idea, but so powerful. It's like taking something that you already enjoy, that brings you joy, and weaving it into a new experience.
Exactly. And, one of the most basic but really important ways to start rebuilding that positive connection is through non-sexual touch.
Mm.
So something as simple as holding hands, cuddling, or giving a back massage, those things can be incredibly healing.
It's about reconnecting with your body in a way that feels safe and comfortable and rediscovering what feels good, right? And I imagine communication plays a big role in all of this, too.
You're so right. Open and honest communication with yourself and with your partner is crucial. It's about being able to express your needs and your boundaries without feeling any pressure or shame.
Yeah, the Rewire Newsgroup video gave an example of how someone might explain their needs to a partner, and they didn't even have to disclose specific details of their trauma. They said something like, "There are just certain things that make me uncomfortable, and I need you to be patient and understanding as I figure things out."
That's a great example, and it's a really good way to kind of set the stage for a supportive and respectful dynamic. And if you find it hard to communicate or to process these complex emotions, seeking professional help from a trauma-informed therapist can be so valuable.
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes you just need a safe space and someone who really understands the complexity of trauma to help you work through all of this, right?
A therapist can help you develop coping mechanisms, process your experiences, and ultimately move towards healing and rediscovering intimacy in a way that feels right for you.
This is all so insightful. I'm already starting to see how much power there is in understanding these concepts and having the right tools to approach intimacy after trauma. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all thing, and there's a lot to unpack here.
You're absolutely right, but what I think is really emerging from these sources is that healing is possible, and there are many paths to get there. It's about honoring your own pace, listening to your body, and seeking support when you need it.
I think those are great words to keep in mind. And speaking of support, one of the things that really resonated with me was this emphasis on community and connection. It's so easy to feel isolated after trauma, but knowing that you're not alone can make all the difference in the world.
It really can. Finding your tribe, whether it's through support groups, therapy, or just connecting with other survivors who really get it, can be so incredibly healing. Sharing your experience and knowing you're not alone, it can be so powerful.
About finding that sense of belonging, right?
Right.
And realizing that you don't have to go through this alone. And it's also about advocating for yourself. If something doesn't feel right, speak up, set those boundaries. Your voice matters.
It absolutely does.
Right.
It's about reclaiming your power and taking control of your own narrative. Healing is about finding your voice and using it to create a life that feels safe, authentic, and fulfilling.
And speaking of finding your voice, one of the things that really struck me from Kat Smith's TEDx talk was her discussion of the intimacy wheel. She talks about how intimacy isn't just about sex, it's about all these other elements like care, respect, passion, and support. I think that's something so important to consider, especially when we're talking about healing after trauma.
It is. It's a really interesting way to think about intimacy, especially when you consider how trauma can affect those different aspects. So maybe a good question to reflect on is, how might expanding your definition of intimacy beyond just sex help you connect with yourself and others in new and fulfilling ways?
That's a great question to think about. It really highlights how healing and growth can happen in so many different areas of our lives.
And as you continue to explore this complex topic, just remember that healing is possible, you are worthy of love and pleasure, and there's a whole world of support out there waiting for you. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing in the power of your own resilience.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, and I hope you're walking away with a deeper understanding of intimacy after trauma, as well as a sense of hope and empowerment.
We'll be back with more insights and resources in the next part of this deep dive. Until then, take care and be well. You know what I thought was really cool? The Dissociate video had all these practical tips for navigating intimacy after trauma. Like, it wasn't just big picture stuff. It was like, okay, here's what you can actually do in the moment.
Yeah, that was really helpful, right? It's like, okay, this is hard, but at least there are things I can try.
Exactly. And one thing they suggested that I thought was really interesting was experimenting with positions, but like in a non-sexual way. So
Hmm.
the idea is to try different positions with your partner, but in a safe setting, just to kind of see what feels comfortable and what might be triggering.
It's almost like a dress rehearsal for intimacy, right?
Yeah.
You can kind of build up that awareness and prepare yourself for potentially difficult situations without the added pressure of it actually being sexual.
Right. You can explore your boundaries and communicate your needs, but in a more gradual and controlled way.
And if you do start to feel overwhelmed or triggered, they talk about using grounding techniques, like familiar music, scents, that kind of thing. It's like having those sensory anchors to bring you back to the present moment and help you feel safe.
Yeah. It's all about regulating your nervous system, right?
Hmm?
Creating a sense of calm and stability. Those familiar sensations can be so powerful in grounding you and helping you feel more in control.
They also had this tip about requesting your partner to remove certain things that might be triggering, like certain types of jewelry or clothing. Again, it's about taking those proactive steps to create a safe and comfortable environment.
Yeah, and it really highlights the importance of communication, having those open conversations with your partner about what you need to feel safe and secure.
It's like building that foundation of trust and understanding, brick by brick. But it's not just about the physical aspects, right? There's also this whole inner world of healing that needs to happen, addressing those emotional and psychological wounds.
Absolutely. It's about addressing that negative self-talk, those harmful beliefs, and replacing them with positive affirmations. It's about rediscovering your self-worth and remembering that you are lovable and deserving of happiness.
That reminds me of the quote from the Mended Light video. You are loved, you are worthy, and you are cared for. Such a simple but powerful message that I think every survivor needs to hear.
Oh, it's so true. It's so important to remind ourselves of that inherent worthiness, especially when we're navigating the complex and often painful journey of healing. Trauma can really shake our sense of self. Those positive affirmations can be like a lifeline.
It's about reclaiming your power, right?
Yeah.
Both internally and in your relationships. And speaking of relationships, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on navigating intimacy with a partner after experiencing trauma. It seems like communication would have to be absolutely essential.
You're hitting on a really crucial point. Communication is paramount. Being able to express your needs and boundaries clearly and honestly, and feeling confident that your partner will listen and respect those boundaries.
I imagine that can be really difficult for some people, though. Like, how do you even begin to have those conversations when it feels so vulnerable and scary?
Well, it is a process, there's no doubt about that. It takes courage, vulnerability, but you don't have to disclose every detail of your trauma if you don't feel comfortable doing so. It's more about communicating your needs and your preferences in a way that your partner can understand and respect.
So what are some practical ways to approach those conversations?
Well, for starters, it can be really helpful to create a safe and comfortable environment where you both feel relaxed and open to talking. So maybe choose a time when you're both feeling calm and connected.
Yeah, makes sense. It's hard to have a meaningful conversation when you're stressed out or distracted.
Exactly. And remember, it's okay to start small. You don't have to dive into the deepest, most vulnerable stuff right away. You can start by talking about what feels good physically, what kind of touch you enjoy, what makes you feel safe and relaxed.
It's like building that foundation of trust and intimacy step by step.
Precisely. And as you build that trust, you can gradually start to explore more challenging topics. Maybe talk about things that make you uncomfortable or things you'd like to avoid.
And I imagine that can be really empowering for someone who's felt like they've lost control in the past, right?
Yeah.
It's about taking ownership of your experiences and communicating your needs assertively.
Yes, exactly. It's about shifting from a place of fear and avoidance to a place of empowerment and agency.
I love that. That's such an inspiring way to think about it. And if you're finding those conversations difficult or you're struggling to process all of this on your own, therapy can be an incredible resource.
It can be. A trauma-informed therapist can provide that safe and supportive space for you to explore those feelings, develop coping mechanisms, and work towards healing and rediscovering intimacy in a way that feels right for you. They can also help you navigate those difficult conversations with your partner and build a stronger, healthier relationship.
So it sounds like there are a lot of different avenues for support in healing, whether it's through therapy, community, or just having those open and honest conversations with your partner.
And remember, healing is a journey. It's not a destination. It's about taking things one step at a time, honoring your own pace, and celebrating your progress along the way.
I love that. It's a reminder that there's no right or wrong way to heal, and it's a process that unfolds over time. And I think that ties in beautifully with what Kat Smith was talking about in her TEDx talk, this idea that intimacy is so much more than just sex.
Right. Her intimacy wheel really expands our understanding of what intimacy can be. She talks about elements like care, respect, passion, and support, which are all essential components of a healthy and fulfilling relationship.
And I imagine those elements can be even more important for someone who's experienced trauma. It's about rebuilding that sense of safety, connection, and trust, but on multiple levels.
You're exactly right. Trauma can really impact all those different aspects of intimacy. So it's about rebuilding those connections, both with yourself and with your partner, in a way that feels authentic and safe.
So as we wrap up this second part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm wondering what key takeaways you'd like our listener to walk away with.
Well, first and foremost, I want to emphasize that healing is possible. It's not always easy. It takes time. It takes effort, but it's absolutely within reach.
And you don't have to do it alone, right?
Yeah.
There's so much support available, whether it's through therapy, support groups, or connecting with other survivors.
And remember, intimacy isn't just about sex. It's about all those other beautiful elements: connection, trust, vulnerability, joy.
And those elements can be even more powerful when you're rebuilding after trauma. It's about finding ways to reconnect with yourself, your body, and your partner in a way that feels safe, empowering, and ultimately pleasurable.
Wow, this deep dive has been quite a journey. We've talked about so much: the impact of trauma, the science behind healing, and, all those different paths to reclaiming a sense of safety and pleasure in intimacy.
It really has, and it's been so eye-opening for me. Hopefully it's been helpful for everyone listening as well. One of the biggest things I'm taking away is that, healing is a journey, and it looks different for everybody.
So true. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about honoring your own pace, listening to your body, and seeking support when you need it.
Yeah, and something that really stood out to me was this whole idea of expanding our definition of intimacy, like Kat Smith talked about in her TEDx talk with the intimacy wheel. Right? It's not just about sex. It's about all these other things like care, respect, passion, and support.
It's a good reminder that intimacy is way more than just the physical. It's about connection, vulnerability, all those shared experiences that really feed our hearts and souls.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a final question to think about.
Okay, I'm listening.
How might expanding your definition of intimacy beyond just sex help you connect with yourself and others in new and fulfilling ways?
That is a great question. It makes you think about all the different ways we can experience those connections. Maybe it's deepening the relationships you already have, nurturing your friendships, or even just finding new ways to connect with yourself through self-care.
It's about recognizing that intimacy is all around us, right?
Right.
If we're open to it. So to everyone listening, wherever you are on your path, remember, you are not alone. There's support out there, and there's a brighter future ahead. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing in the power of your own resilience.
Well said. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.